Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wiseguy Show right here on the Writer Albert Lanier channel. I, of course, am your host, Albert Lanier. I'm not a wise guy, but for all intents and purposes, at this moment here on YouTube, guess I am. Here talking about all the action going on in the National Football League. We're at 10. Last week, of course, was the midway point, so this is over the hump, so to speak. Kind of. Not entirely. We've still got what, 17, 18, 7 or 8 games to go. But, 7 or 8 weeks to go. Really 7 games to go. But in any event, time to talk about what's been happening in week 10 of the NFL. So let's begin with a game that was played in Europe, another international game, the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And this turned out to be one of the best games of the week. I think it's the game of the week thus far. Now, that's interesting because I didn't really see this as a really good game or a potentially good game. I felt that the Colts were going to make a comeback. This ended up being a very tight game. The Falcons played a good game. Michael Penix looked pretty good in this game. I think that they were able to run the ball, especially. I liked what the Atlanta Falcons did with the run game here. I think they were able to pick up some first downs. They were able to get real close. This went to overtime. But the Colts managed to eke out a win in overtime over Atlanta Falcons. Who knew? The Falcons are a weird team. They're capable of having great games like they did against the Bills. This was another really good game that they had against the Colts. They played probably one of their best games of the season against the Colts here. And I think what's important about the Colts is this. Ever since their loss to Pittsburgh last week, I think teams are trying to figure out or may have figured out a way to play the Colts. And that is you load up the pass rush. You load up pressure on that front 4 or 5, whatever you're doing, and you put enough pressure on Daniel Jones. But here's another aspect that I can say now in regards to the Colts. Hello to those in the chat. Here's what I would say now about the Colts. I was saying before that I think that if both of their star players, Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor, get injured, this team wouldn't have a shot at much in the playoffs or going too far in the playoffs. And I've said that both are important on this team. Well, both are important, but at this point, I have to say that I think the real indispensable player on this Colts team is Jonathan Taylor. He had a great game here. He had some nice rushes, some nice carries with the ball. And, of course, he won the game with his touchdown in overtime. I think Jonathan Taylor is the important player on this team. And I think, not only is he a breakout star this year because he's leading in rushing yardages and probably will win the rushing title. Can't say definitively yet. I really think he is the player for this squad. I think he's become that. I don't think he was last year before, but I think he's become that. I think he's become the important player for the Colts. And I think if he's injured, I don't think they're going to have much success in the postseason. So I think Jonathan Taylor is the guy on the Colts. Whereas before, I kind of, shared it with Daniel Jones. I think if he's injured, I don't think they're going to have much of a shot in the playoffs. But I think if Daniel Jones is injured, they still have a shot with Jonathan Taylor. So that ended up being, thus far, from what I see, the game of the week. Often in games, excuse me, often in weeks you see patterns. with games. Sometimes you see patterns in games. I think one pattern this week was collapse. There were some teams that collapsed. And I'll give one such team that collapsed was Jacksonville. The Jaguars played the Texans. Jaguars had gotten 2 turnovers early in the first half, including on a run back by the Texans. They got it on the return. They managed to score. They scored over 20 points in this game. Um, the Jaguars did. But the Texans managed to come back. It's interesting because you have C.J. Stroud out, I think because of a concussion, and Mills in. And I have to say, this Texans team looks better with Mills in as quarterback than they do as with Stroud. Stroud's had maybe 1 or 2 good games. But you look at Mills in this game, he threw fairly well. He ran for a touchdown later on in the game. This was a Texans game where the offense looked crisp, it looked sharp, it looked good. It didn't look like a team that only won a couple of games. And this Jaguars team collapsed. I mean, that's the best that I could say. They had a lead, not only early on in the game, but they really just collapsed. I mean, when you look at the Texans, they're not a good team. They're just not. Their defense is okay. It's pretty good. And I think the defense did a really good job in this game. Really good job getting after Trevor Lawrence and getting after that offensive line, or trying to get through that offensive line. So I think one of the things you have to do is credit the Texans defense. But the Jaguars had a shot at winning this game, and a good shot at that, and they collapsed. It's shocking. They're a weird team this year, the Jaguars. The Jaguars are an odd team. They can win. They can come up with a really good, solid win, or a decent enough win like they did against the Chiefs, and then they get blown away like they did against the Rams. And in this game, they pretty much had this at certain parts of the game, and they threw it. They pretty much weren't able to do it. I think the Jaguars. It's hard to say where this team is going to go. You can't lose games like this to teams like the Texans. The Texans, the Jaguars are in the playoff hunt. The Texans, maybe some might say they are, but they're still behind. You can't lose games like this to teams like the Texans. It's understandable if you lose to the Rams. You shouldn't, but it's understandable. The Rams are a really good team. But you're losing to a team like the Texans. Yeah, they got a decent defense, but their offense looked good in this game. I mean, their offense looked far better than they did in the previous game. I don't know. It's hard to get a handle on the Jaguars this year. They've won some games. They have a decent record, but their record, I think they may end up slipping and losing some games here because I don't know if they can hold on. Even against the Raiders, they barely won that game. Jaguars may be in trouble here. I think if you come after this team in the late, I'd say in the second half, it really more for the fourth, you got a good shot at beating them. And the Texans certainly did that. Here's another one. I said before, the Chicago Bears are the luckiest team in the NFL this year. They're winning games that they would normally lose, and they're winning games that they should lose. This is one of those games. They had a good solid drive early on for 7. The Chicago did in this game against the Giants. And the Giants put together a good game. Jackson Dart had a couple of touchdowns. The Bears defense did a pretty good job, especially with end zone defense. That end zone defense was pretty stiff in this game. And so Jackson Dart had to run in a couple touchdowns. But he ended up going out late in this game, and everything seemed to just collapse. They had a 10-point lead at one point. Not a huge lead, but it's a nice lead. And you had Russell Wilson get sacked. And then on a kickoff, you had a punt that was disastrous because it ended up being shorter than it should have been. It was like 26 yards, way short. So you had a descending order of disastrous plays occur for the Giants, either to the Giants or for the Giants. And the Bears were able to get back in this game, and they were able to win. I mean, again, when you take a look at this game and you also look at the Bengals game, how they won that, the Bears are winning these games late now. I hate to say it, but they're one of the teams that you should look out for. I think the Bears are what I call a hidden gem. They're a hidden gem. They're a team you should look out for because I don't believe in luck or anything like that. But if there was such a thing as luck, I just call it coincidence. But coincidence favors them. That's how I use luck. And the reality is they're winning games they should have lost. I've cataloged this before. They managed to block field goal attempt for the Raiders. Raiders probably could have won that game. They managed to get a turnover in the game with the Commanders. And need I talk about the Bengals game where they managed to get a touchdown after the Bengals had scored? They managed to get a touchdown after a throw or two, managed to get a 50 plus yard rushing touchdown with less than 20 seconds on the clock. The Bears are the luckiest team in the NFL, and they win another game. Fortune favors them. And I'm saying this about the Bears. Look out for this team. They're I call them the hidden gems of the NFL. They're maybe the gem they're kind of a diamond in the rough right now because they're winning these games. And if they manage to get everything together and not rely on fortune going their way, we don't know what the NFC is going to look like. I'd say look out for the Chicago Bears. Look out for the Chicago Bears. They managed to pull all these games off. And the Giants collapsed. That's another game. But theirs was really spectacular. I mean, you had a sack. You had the punt. It just just a terrible game. So you have those two. So you had collapses. You also had what I call stacking, teams getting a lot of points, right? I'll give you an example. So there were relative blowouts, but stacking. I'll give you an example, or I'll give you some examples. You look at the Rams facing the 49ers. You look at the Rams facing the 49ers, and the Rams scored 3 touchdowns in the first half, right? 49ers came back, they made it a game, but I think the Rams had scored like 40 points. I've said before, Rams are one of the best teams in the NFC. The 49ers played a good game. They didn't have a bad game here, but the Rams were just overwhelming. I saw this when they played the Jaguars. This is a team that can just score when they're able to score consistently, not just a touchdown, but 2 or 3. It's scary. But this is a team, again, that's stacking. They're racking up the points. They scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. And they were able to win over the 49ers. Again, people will say 49ers have injuries. Yes, they have injuries, but they played well despite the injuries. The 49ers have been able to do that. But I think the 49ers are just overwhelmed by this Rams team. This Rams team was just able to score effectively against them. I would also take a look at the game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. That was another game. They scored 30, 35 points. Seattle scored 35 points in the first half. 35 points. I said before, this is another hidden gem. I've called them a hidden gem. I said, this is a team that this is a team meaning the Seahawks, that are going to be or tough out during the season. This is a team that's going to be, unless something happens with Darnold, unless Darnold hits the wall and gets reduced to ordinariness, this is a team that's going to be a possible home wrecker during the playoffs. And I think they have a good shot at making the playoffs. I think they probably will make it to the playoffs. This is a team that's going to be very scary to deal with. 35 points against the Cardinals. The Cardinals managed to get back, but here's the interesting thing about this game. The Seahawks had like 2 or 3 turnovers in this game, and the Cardinals were able to score off the turnovers. And the Cardinals weren't able to win. They were overwhelmed by the Seahawks. The Seahawks also scored, of the 35 points in the first half, they ended up scoring over like 38 or more. Of that 35 in the first half, 2 touchdowns were scored by turnovers. Defense scored 2 touchdowns. Ran it in. This team is scary. Don't everybody talks about, well, is Indianapolis for real? Are they for real? They should be looking at Seattle. This team is for real. The Cardinals had a good victory against Dallas, but that really doesn't mean anything. They're not a consistent team. This Seahawks team is consistent. Their defense is good. And their offense is, Smith and Jigba and Darnold and some of these other players, they're putting points on the board. This is a team to look out for. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and they're a potential home wrecker. If this is a wild card team, which they may very well be, don't know yet, but this is a wild card team, ooh, you better look out. You wouldn't want to face this team. I don't think you want to face this team in any round of the playoffs. Seattle's bad. They're a hidden gem, but they're not going to be hidden for long. Not going to be hidden for long. So you have teams racking it up. Also, you had the Lions and the Commanders. They scored a ton of points. They scored at least a couple of touchdowns, 2 or 3 touchdowns in their game. But that's not really a surprise. The Commanders played better than I kind of expected in this game, but Lions game. So, again, you see the signs. You see the patterns. You see kind of the motifs for what occurred this week. I think the best game that I saw was, I think the best game. Oh, one more thing. I should note the Patriots-Buccaneers game. Patriots beat Buccaneers. That was a good game, good solid game. But the Patriots were able to use the run effectively against the Buccaneers. And they were able, I think defensively did a pretty good job. They held the Buccaneers. They weren't able to get into too tough a position with the Buccaneers. Wasn't a great game, but it was a good game. And everybody, right now, when you're looking at the AFC, you're going to have to deal with this Patriot team because you had the Bills lose to the Dolphins. Yeah, they lost to the Dolphins. And I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at the Bills right now. Some of the times they lose they lose some of these games. They lose some of these games. So I'm looking at the Bills right now. I said this before, I'll say it again. You know, you can't afford to lose too many games in this division. I don't think the Bills are going to win their division. The way the Patriots are playing right now looks like they're in a position to make a run to be AFC East champions. And it's going to be a tremendous turnaround for this Patriots team because they're able to do it. They beat the Buccaneers. Now that's probably one of the tests. Buccaneers are a good team this year. They've been banged up, but they're a good team. And they've been able to win games late. The Patriots have to win games like this. I think they need to win games. I mean, they nearly lost the Falcons. They needed a game like this. And they needed to show that they can beat good teams. And I think that's about it for week 10 of the Wiseguy show. Of course, this, has been the Wiseguy show. The show making you wise or getting you wise to what's going on in the NFL right here on YouTube. Bye-bye.